Hello. In this video, I'm going to talk a bit about this Forbidden Watchtower 3D print that I've painted and embellished. The model is by Kijai, and I've linked to it in the video's description if you'd like to give it a shot yourself. I've also included links to a video I made about materials and a link to my blog where I have lots of pictures of my models and some additional descriptions on how I've painted and embellished them. So, straight into the painting of this one. But first I will just mention that in this version I printed it in two pieces, so it wasn't completely supportless. There were some slight supports on the lid, and it's hollowed out so you can add lights. I have not added lights as of yet. I intend to at some point, so that's why it's in two pieces. The first thing I did was I obviously tidied up where the supports were, clipped everything away, filed down any bits I needed to file, and then I was ready to prime. I primed the whole thing in just grey acrylic paint, which I brushed on, and I allowed it to dry for a day to make sure that it was good and dry before I started adding in any additional paint. Now, when I was ready to paint, I decided that I wanted to make the tower very coppery. That's one of my favorite paints to play with. I really enjoy metallics. You'll see them in most of my painted and embellished prints. I incorporate metallics wherever I can. They catch the light really beautifully, as you can see. And yeah, they just look great on the models, and this was a great opportunity for me to do something very coppery. So I blocked in the copper on the tower and on the lid. And for the stones, since it was already primed in grey, I didn't really need to do anything. So the next thing I moved on to were my shadows. Now the stones were primed in a light grey, so what I needed to do was bring out the shadows everywhere else. There's so many crevices. This is a really, really good model to paint because you don't really have to do a lot to it and it will look fantastic. Because of all these wonderful textures that were created with all these little stones. So yeah, there was just a black wash put all over, made sure I got into all these little crevices here. And a black wash was also applied here because there are bricks here, which you can see. So I needed to darken those crevices up and around the windows and whatnot. So I darkened that up and allowed it to dry completely. And the next thing to do were the details and the highlights. Now the details are like these bands here all around the windows. Those were quite tedious but worth it to do it correctly. All around the windows here with the red and the crossbars. And the highlights are applied with a dry brush and to the stones and the steps. It was first just a lighter grey, and I just brushed that on there very carefully, very gently, and it looked like $1,000,000. I mean, that's all you need to do. Black wash, lighter highlights, brings out all those wonderful stones. It looks like you've spent a lot of time individually painting each one, but you haven't at all. So that's what I did to the base here. I highlighted some metallic copper over the brickwork that I had darkened into with the black wash. I highlighted the stones around here as well, around the windows, the big lighthousey windows. And that was pretty much it for highlights and around the door. And then I went back and forth with some additional washes and highlights, because that's what I do. There's nothing that says you have to get it right on the first try. Just do it until it looks right to you. And I decided to darken this up with a metallic black, because it was just too samey with all the copper. And when everything was just about where I wanted it, I thought I wanted to add some kind of algae to the stones. So I did that with a light green, and I just dry brushed that on top of the light grey, which gave it a nice light base to cling to. On the lid here, I also brushed on some green because I wanted it to look a bit oxidized. And there's green also dry brushed onto the tower itself, which you can see. And after that was all dry, that was the end of the painting. And so the last thing I did was I embellished it with some static grass, some nail flocking powder, which is finer than static grass, and it's quite fluffy. It makes a great moss. So I put that on first, and then some static grass on top to kind of layer up the foliage. I applied clump foliage in tiny pieces around the base of the tower here. I created kind of like bushes that are a bit climbing, like, I don't know, I guess it looks a bit like climbing ivy or something. And not very much, just a tiny bit, just enough to give it that additional bit of character and uniqueness. And that's really the end of the embellishing painting for this model. Um, if you have any questions at all, please just drop them in the comments and I'll get back to you. Bye.